And we are good to go.
Welcome and good evening, everyone. This is the workshop, the final workshop for the Multimodal Transportation Master Plan Workshop. We are really excited to have you here this evening. Thank you to everyone who has taken the time to review the concepts and participate in tonight's workshop. This workshop will be recorded and posted on our website following the meeting for any of you that would like to share it with others or watch it following the discussion. So if you're joining us for the first time tonight, I'll go ahead and take just a couple minutes to give you some background information. We began this effort about a year ago, just over a year ago, and really the first half of the planning effort included trying to digest and gather a bunch of information from the community and past efforts of what are all the challenges related to transportation in our community. And then the second half of the planning effort is what are the solutions? And so that's, in my perspective, that's the fun part. So we're really looking forward to present those to you this evening. I will say that this planning document is intended to be a 20-year planning visioning document, as well as provide an implementation strategy for how are we going to go about resolving some of our transportation challenges in the short term, midterm, as well as the long term. To assist us with that effort, we engaged OTAC as well as their subconsultant, Fair and Pierce. We have them on the line with us tonight. Good evening, Mandy and Preston. They will be providing majority of the presentation tonight, and we will go through each concept. We will encourage everyone attending to use the little question and answer icon at the bottom of your Zoom meeting. If you have any questions as we're talking through things, feel free to type them to us, not in the chat, but in the Q&A section. And then we'll try and go ahead and capture those questions into our presentation. That said, at the end of the presentation, we will open up an opportunity for you to actually have a chance to engage verbally. If you want to ask your own questions in your own words, that's certainly welcome and encouraged. So thank you all again for participating tonight, and let's just go ahead and dive right in. Mandy, I'll kick it off to you.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Are you able to bring up the Baldy Mountain concept first? I think we'll talk about that one first.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us tonight, and Preston and I will work together to present some of these concepts and ideas to you. The first one we're going to talk about is the Baldy Mountain Extension, which is a concept that's been around for a while. In our study process, we, let's see, it's going to probably be, there it is. All right. In our study process, we really validated the need for this and met with a lot of different stakeholders who felt this was needed, including people who are in trucking and industry, and really feel like a connection, more direct connection to Highway 2 would help their efforts. And in conjunction with that, there is a need to really focus on north-south traffic through Sandpoint, and Division Avenue has been another key study area for us, in particular because it's a corridor that has a lot of different uses in the community. So there are multiple schools and community destinations along that corridor. And right now it is used as, for trucking and freight movement as well. So in trying to look ahead and think about the future of Division Avenue as a safer corridor for all users, including pedestrians and bicyclists, the idea of creating this extension with Baldy Mountain to the highway really has a lot of merit, because that will help to take some of the trucking access and traffic and move that directly to the highway and points north and south from there. And those truck trips then would not necessarily have to go on Division as they do now. So I'm just going to quickly cover a few more of the issues, and then maybe Preston, if you wouldn't mind just kind of walking through the solution that we have here, that would be great. Connecting more directly to Highway 2 will relieve truck traffic and congestion on Division, as I just described. And specifically, that Division Avenue can then function better for access to schools and community destinations. The east-west grid network is really not existent in this area, and that forces more truck traffic and general traffic and congestion north-south through neighborhoods on Boyer Avenue as well as Division. Baldi is really the primary collector, serving the industrial areas with heavier use trucks along Baldi, Great Northern, and Woodland. Truck users have limited routes to get to Highway 95. So the current truck route is on Division, and that's, again, a roadway that has a lot of mixed traffic uses in the community. When we met with a trucking group, we really took a close look at what trucking routes should be in the community, and this lined up really well with that. So the other thing to note is that today, Baldy Mountain Road and Boyer Avenue, as well as US 2 Boyer intersections, experience vehicle delay as a result of higher traffic volumes and frequent train crossings. So this would help to resolve that issue, this design, this concept that we're talking about. And then safety and overall mobility concerns exist when truck routes also serve as a primary corridor for schools or other uses in the community. So this would, again, put the focus on this route for truck use, which seemed to be a great solution. And I'm going to turn it over now to Preston. If you might want to just walk folks through what we're showing them here on screen, that'd be great.
Sure. All right, so what you see on the screen is a concept of that connection. So you see Boyer there, north-south road, and Baldi, and those who have traveled through that intersection recently probably have seen that it can get pretty busy during your peak times of day. And with future development planned in the area, it will only get more congested, and it is nearing or at capacity already with some of those movements there. And with the train crossing there, it also causes some issues with queues spilling back into areas north and south of us there. So the recommendation is to put a traffic signal at that intersection, and we'll have to put some gates at the railroad crossing itself, and the crossing will be coordinated with the signal with timing wise, so you don't have vehicles being queued or stopped on top of the tracks for safety reasons. And that will help that intersection operate more efficiently there. And then you'll see the connection continue there to the east until it gets to 5th Avenue or US 2. And at that location, it's another traffic signal, but instead of being a full traffic signal, we're proposing what we call a high T concept. And in that concept, I'll try to illustrate it here. The northbound movement never stops. So it's continuous flow. It'll still have your mast arm for your signal going over, but it'll be a constant green arrow pointing straight so they know they can keep going. The movement that stops is the left turn. So now we'll have a left turn there with this new road. And we'll also have southbound traffic coming here. So when we need to run the left turns, the signal will go red for the southbound, and then the left turns can go and make their movement across. And then when there aren't left turns or we need to let the southbound go, then it will go red for that movement and the southbound goes. It's just a much more efficient way to keep traffic moving, especially on a highway that's near an interchange. That will work really well in this area.
Thanks, Preston.
Yep.
I think it might be, before we move on to talk about Highway 2 solutions more to the south, I think it might be good to just pause here and see if there are any questions or comments from meeting attendees. If you'd like to ask anything in the Q&A tab, feel free. We'll just pause for a minute and see if anything comes in, and if not, we'll keep going.
Perfect. Alternatively, if you would rather not type your questions, if you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to raise your hand, and our clerk will certainly let us know we have someone who'd like to comment, and we'll open that platform up. While we're waiting for comments to come in, I'll go ahead and just add to the background on this project. This was contemplated initially in, I think it was around 2006. This concept as part of an overall planning effort for how to handle potential growth to the north. This was initially contemplated at that time. And my point with adding that note is that it's been identified as a need in the community for quite some time. And so we're really excited to have a proposed solution to potentially include in an adopted master plan to acknowledge that the importance of the project and connectivity. So with that, it looks like we do have a question here. I will target this one towards Preston. So the question is, are you able to turn both left and right off of Baldi onto US 2?
Yes, great question. The answer is yes. I failed to mention the movements on that side of it, but yes, that is. So with this left turn, they would come off of here. There'd be an acceleration, a separate lane here for those cars to accelerate and then merge over into the traffic there, because this northbound does not stop. So it keeps that pretty efficiently working there. And then yes, you'd be able to do a right turn there on a yield or a green light. Good question.
That is a good question.
Okay. Oh, here's another one.
Oh, good. We like the questions. It makes it a far more productive conversation. The question is, are the landowners on board with allowing a brand new city right-of-way for that new segment of Baldi? Great question. I'm happy to answer that one. So actually, the city of Sandpoint already owns this parcel that is currently shown here, where the proposed roadway alignment is provided here in the concept. So it's city-owned property. It is currently leased, and we have been in conversations with the current leasees, if you will, about how to potentially transition to this concept in the future. So some advantages to that in the very point of the question, which is, yes, it is property that we own.
Great. Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right. With that, if you think of anything else on this concept that you'd like to ask at the end of the presentations, please feel free. We're happy to go back to this concept if anything comes up in the meantime. So with that, we will go to our next concept here.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I have a little bit of barking in the background, but I think it's calming down, so sorry about that. So I'll just say a few high points about this. This area of the Highway 2 corridor is located more on the southern gateway to the town. And we have several different concepts that we're looking at in this area that we're going to go through with you. And some of the key issues, which I'm sure everyone's well aware of in the corridor, is that we have numerous access points onto the highway. And we also have skewed intersections coming in at different angles. So that makes access sometimes a little bit challenging for people getting across. Also, you know, it can affect traffic flow, and there are crash occasions that happen along here. So it's not as intuitive for motorists and for active transportation, walking and bicycling, as we would like it to be. And there are several improvements that we can make to really make this corridor function better for all modes of traffic. So with that, Preston, do you want to kind of walk through some of the solutions? And we might break periodically, because I know we have quite a few to cover, but you know, maybe do a couple intersections, 3 or 4 intersections, take a break, and then continue on.
Yes. All right, well, let's start down at number 1, and Mandy, feel free to jump in if I'm missing something and it's not super clear on the screen as well. So for those who are looking at this, feel free to chime in if you've got questions there too, as we walk through these, and we'll pause as Mandy mentioned. So at number 1, which is Ontario Street in US 2. So that's a location that again has a couple different roadways tying in all in one location, which makes it a little difficult to, just for efficiency purposes of general vehicular circulation, but also for expectancy of who's going to do what movements. So from a safety side of things, cleaning that up will help. And in addition to that, we have a multi-use path on that north side of US 2. So we have more than just vehicles using this corridor. We have we have pedestrians and bicycles as well. So there's a crosswalk at that location that is right now crossing more in a diagonal fashion across US 2. We're proposing to realign that so it's crossing in a perpendicular, straight across in a kind of 90-degree angle across that road, and that reduces the distance of crossing area for pedestrians, makes it a shorter crossing, and also gives them better sight lines for the pedestrians to look both ways as they're crossing, and helps them stand out a little bit better for the vehicles as well. We also are restricting some movements there. We're restricting left turns. Mandy, you may have to remind me exactly on the location. We're restricting those on US 2, is that right?
Create new left turn lanes
new
on
left
US
turns.
2. Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah.
So those are left turn lanes on US 2 to help reduce some of the delay and propensity for potential crashes there, rear end crashes, by allowing getting those left turns into their own lanes.
Yeah, and I also might mention too that we understand that by linking Ella to the highway, that will become a new route for people that want to turn left and go to places like Doves and Winter Ridge. And we heard today that parking needs and access on the local use only sections will really need to be further fleshed out. This is just a planning level concept, and of course these design solutions would go to a preliminary engineering phase and then on to final engineering. And so a lot of the details related to, exact widths of sidewalks and locations of sidewalks and crosswalks and those kinds of details would be fleshed out in preliminary engineering. So just wanted to make sure that people are aware that those kinds of things will get worked out in the future.
Good input. And just to follow back onto that Ontario Street location, so that's you're aware that US 2 is a 2-lane road right there, so it's just 2 lanes. There is not a center turn lane or turn lanes at all in that location like there are further up the road. And so if there's a car that wants to turn left off of US 2 onto Ontario, they stop all the traffic behind them. So by introducing those left turn lanes, left turn pockets, however you want to define those, helps those left turns get out of the lane of traffic and keep traffic moving on US 2, and again help reduce those potential for rear end collisions that can occur there. Okay. US 2 and division, which is number 2 there on the screen. That's a signal today, a traffic signal, and it is operating efficiently okay today. I know there are times when it gets a little busier, especially during the school let out and during the school morning and evening peaks. But in general, it's functioning okay. And as time goes along and as traffic increases, updates to that traffic signal in terms of timing will be done. But we're recommended that signal maintain the way it is today. Moving up the corridor northeast as we go. Number 3 is Olive Avenue and Highway 2. And as Mandy mentioned before, there are several locations along here where we have roadways coming in at all different angles. And they're not coming in at nice T intersections onto US 2. They're coming at different angles, in some cases multiple roads coming all in one area, and just causes for some confusion. and introduces a lot more conflict area than we would be comfortable with from a safety perspective. So this is another one of those locations where we'd like to restrict some movements. In this case, we're recommending that it be a right in, right out. So you can turn off of US 2, turn right onto one of those streets, depending on which direction you're going. And then if you're on one of those side streets, you can turn right out, but you can't turn left out. And in the big picture of transportation planning, your left turns onto roadways are always your highest delay. That's what gives you the most congestion, because you have to wait for both sides of traffic to give you that gap to be able to make that movement. That's where your most of your delay comes, and it's also where you have the higher probability of crashes. So when it's not a protected, meaning a signal location, those can be precarious when you have higher traffic volumes on that road. So that's the recommendation there. Mandy, you want to stop with those three and just see if there's any comments?
Yeah, sure. We pause for a few minutes and see if anyone has any questions they want to put into the Q&A, or raise your hand, as Amanda said earlier. Looks like well, we'll just wait. I know sometimes it takes a minute to type, so we'll just wait a few more seconds. It's great that we have 5 attendees tonight. That's really good. Okay, well, why don't we keep going, Preston? If a question does come in, we can always pause. Yeah.
Great. All right, so going on to number 4 on the screen, that's at Ella Avenue and US 2. And if you remember at that location, and here's if you look at the screen here at number 4, the kind of the zoomed in version, you can see there's a section right here that is just grass. It's a kind of a grass landscape area. And we are proposing that this location be the future traffic signal location. We don't want to put traffic signals too close to one another, because that doesn't allow for good progression of your vehicles down the highway. It can actually cause more delay than actually help with the delay that you're trying to solve. So by spacing them appropriately, we have better traffic progression. You have these groups of cars, go from one and they go to the other, and they kind of work through the system in a coordinated way. And so we're trying to place future signals in the best location where it still gives us good efficient flow in the future, but also serves our side streets in a great way. So we have one at Division already today. We also have a signal at Boyer today, and we'll talk about some potential changes there. And about right in the middle, we have Ella, and that's the best next location to put a signal. We have a good grid system, a grid network of streets on that south side of the neighborhood with all those neighborhoods, and a great one to the north with all those neighborhoods, including all the schools and things. And if we can connect that grid system to another great location for a signal, that would be Ella. And that in order to do that, we need to extend or connect the street, because as we talked about before, there's that grass area. So we'll extend the street across, connect it to US 2, and then put in a new signal at that location, which is right there. Okay. And then let's see, number 5 is Marion Avenue and Highway 2. And that's another location where we're just trying to clean things up and restrict left turns in and out of that intersection. And so we'd be restricting that to right in, right out. The next location up is number 6, which is Superior Street in Florence. And that's another kind of messy intersection with multiple roads connecting all in one location. This is a location where we're going to try to clean up with, rearranging the streets slightly, but also restricting some movements and allowing other movements, allowing left turns in to, for instance, left turns in that way and left turns in that way, but not allowing left turns into those other sites, the other side streets. I know it's confusing because there's lots of roads coming in there, but they wouldn't be in those locations, just to try to help reduce some of that conflict. And those would be those ones I just drew there. That one there would be in right in, right out location. Okay.
Okay, well, I just wanted also again to reiterate that this drawing really intended to show a little bit more detail related to the pedestrian connectivity and access. And so we will be adding that to this and before it goes into the plan, and that would include having that sidewalk access that's needed on the south side from Ella to Division. So just wanted to mention that. And also just before we go a little bit further north here, closer to downtown and talk about the Boyer area, just wanted to see if we have any questions or anything before we move on. Looks like we're good. If we want to bring up the next graphic, we can take a look at this. So this is definitely a concept that we've studied very diligently, but it's still a planning level look at what could happen here in the future, and it does need further preliminary engineering, but we've kind of thought through how to facilitate this better north-south access through downtown, through the outskirts of downtown, and in particular, better connect people going east and west to the Highway 2 corridor on 5th via Pine. And we talked about that in one of our first meetings, I believe, how Pine, through the recommendations of this plan, will become more of an east-west route connecting through town, which we think will be really great to have. So with this area, I'm going to turn over to Preston to kind of walk us through what's happening here, because we are calling it the couplet. So we are looking at a southbound route for traffic as well as a northbound route on 5th. So you want to give us a description, Preston?
You bet. All right, well, maybe we'll start here at the northern end and work our way down south as we describe this. So as you go south of Cedar, it breaks into as Mandy mentioned, a couplet. That means we just split the two directions of traffic. So we have southbound over here, that's southbound only, one way. And then on the other side, we have northbound only, one direction only. And what splitting the traffic directions does is it helps distribute your delay of vehicles and helps your intersections where you have signals operate more efficiently because you only have one set of traffic to deal with. And I don't know if how many were on the first workshop we had, but we talked a lot about this area of Church and 5th and Pine and 5th as well in that discussion. But if you missed that, just real quickly, we were recommending that the Church Street and 5th signal that was located right here be taken away. And then a new signal will be placed at Pine Street at 5th right here. And that kind of helps us connect our east-west arterial that we're trying to establish from not only downtown area, but also from US 95. That would then be, so this is kind of our nice east-west connection here that does not exist today because of some restrictions with travel to one way in some of these areas. Okay, let me clear that out so we can see this a little better. So there'll still be some connections in between this couplet. As you can see on Church Street, that's still a two-way street. So you can still go east and west in between here. Those will be stop signs at both those intersections. Instead of having to wait for two directions to travel to cross, you're only looking for gaps in one direction to travel. At Oak Street, however, this section is closed to vehicles, and this will be a pedestrian and bicycle zone only because of its close proximity between these two locations. Doesn't allow for enough queuing for vehicles to where vehicles would start backing up onto both these couplet areas, and then we'd have issues. So the recommendation is to keep that a pedestrian and bike zone only. As you work your way down, I also mentioned there's a multi-use path here that we're putting in on this west side of the couplet. It's the gray line here on the west side, works its way down. It jogs around over here, comes back and connects back in this location. And this is to keep from encroaching on some private businesses that are in this area as much as possible. Okay, so now let's talk about Boyer. Amanda, I wonder if it would be helpful to zoom in a little bit on that section. That's great. Perfect. Okay, so at Boyer, today the intersection's down here to the west, southwest, I guess you can say. And it's a little bit messy because of how close some of these intersections are of Pine Street and Boyer that sit over here today. And there's a lot of queuing that happens all the way back here and blocks the intersection in different directions. It's a one-way section on Pine Street right in this area today. And if we want to try to make this a nice east-west connection and make this a good grid network and continue our arterial through that area, we're proposing to rearrange this a little bit and as much as possible tee things up, meaning make 90-degree angles as much as we can to reduce the length of crossing intersections, both from a vehicle standpoint, also from a pedestrian and bike standpoint, and that helps us by making things square as much as possible. So that's what we're trying to do here. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit cleaner than what we're showing here from a schematic standpoint, but we just wanted to illustrate the purpose. So with this, we have the southbound of the couplet coming in here. So this is southbound traffic only. Northbound traffic is coming up US 2 here, and they can either turn left on Pine Street and go that direction, or they can continue on with the US 2 route and go right there, and then either go east on Pine or left and go north on 5th Avenue to continue up US 2. And this would be a signal here. The signal that was down here at Boyer would be taken away, and then some restriction of movements down there at the old location of Boyer to right in, right out only down here. And we could have a landscaped median in here, depending on how much we wanted to restrict things and or beautify things by having landscape in there, or it could just be concrete barriers, but we're really trying to clean things up and have some good management of the accesses in that area. Let's see, anything else here? There are, locations of businesses and things and houses here that we need to provide local access to. Amanda, if you want to shift just a little bit down to the south. So we're showing a sidewalk here on this south side of US 2, and that would continue. You probably wouldn't be able to see it on those other figures we were showing of the bigger picture of US 2, but the plan would be to have a sidewalk on this side as well, all the way down to provide good pedestrian access. The other side of Highway 2, this is a multi-use path. It may look like the same width as the sidewalk on the other side, but this is intended to be a wider path to accommodate both bikes and pedestrians, two-directional travel, and have a nice buffer between them and the vehicles of green space, so that it's more comfortable for them to ride that and feel a little bit safer with that buffer. And then over here with this new area of Boyer, that's now a right in, right out through here. We'll still have access here as well. so that these businesses that are here and Dubs that is here will still have access over on this side as well. And then you still have Lake Street as well that continues that way. And this would function essentially the way it is today in terms of the intersection, but we just have some reduced movements as you connect to US 2.
And I might mention too, I can't emphasize enough that this is really, we've been calling it a diagram. So it's very conceptual, and this really does need to go through preliminary engineering phase. But just on that note, we're not really showing things like crosswalks at the Boyer intersection or the new intersection, I should say. And so those of course would be part of the design. And then also, this whole assembly could maybe shift a little bit to the north west than as it's shown here. We just really are trying to thread the needle of using that corridor well, but still providing some open space along the shared use path. And as we approach the intersection, things get a little swishy. And of course, with engineering, I think, as Preston mentioned, that can get cleaned up a little bit, and the channelization will get cleaned up a little bit. But just wanted to let people know, very conceptual. And I see that we have some questions coming in, so I will stop talking and maybe we can answer a couple of those.
Yes.
I'll read them. Oh, go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry. I was just pulling the screen up.
Perfect.
And I can turn my camera back on here. There we go. So a question that came in is, what was the thought process in eliminating a left-hand turn from US 2 onto Boyer? This will most likely cause a significant amount of traffic on side residential streets as people try to access places like Dubs, Winter Ridge, or even Memorial Field for large events. Good question. And I know, Preston, you've put a lot of thought into those left-hand turn movements. Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, I'm sure that you're talking about the left turn this direction, which is a great question. We are, just to clarify, we are allowing left turns from this direction that then gets you to Boyer up here, but I'm assuming you're talking about here down to the south. So right. Yes, that would be restricted. Trying to fit in a left turn lane here with the potential of that backing up to the nearby intersection here is the main reason for restricting that. There are ways to get to that location, not only from big picture, looking at the city and the grid network. That's what the city thrives on, is having multiple ways to get to a location, not just a single way. So we've got about, from here, about 1,500 feet to the south of us on US 2, we have a new signal that is planned for Ella, and that would be one location. You can make that left turn, or U-turn and come back up US 2, or work the grid system and make your way up that way. If you're just trying to get to Dubs, likely you do a U-turn at Ella and come back and pull in there. If you're coming from the south, if you're coming from the north, if you're coming from the south on US 2, would be just a right turn into Dubs in this case, or Boyer, to get to that location. So yes, it's, when you're trying to solve the problem of reducing delay on major highways such as this, by cleaning things up, reducing conflicts, and helping it to be safer by doing so, it does mean that you're creating some out of direction travel in some cases to help with those other issues we're trying to solve. And so there will be, a little bit of out of direction travel to get back to that direction. But the good news is we have a great grid system, and we wouldn't be pushing all traffic onto one residential road, for instance. It's just some different movements you'd have to make to get to that location. Good question.
And Preston, I guess another question I'll ask in conjunction with that as we're looking at it. So if I were coming from, Cedar Street, let's say, heading southbound on the highway, and I wanted to go to Dubs or Winter Ridge, wouldn't it also be possible to take this left turn and head down Pine and then back this direction?
Yep, that's another location. And actually another even closer location is at Superior and Florence Street, which we are allowing left turns in at that location because we have good distance between it and the other two signals north and south of it. So at that location, you can do a left turn on Superior and then come in from the backside up onto Boyer, or you can do a U-turn at Superior on US 2 and come back up and do that, which is even shorter than the Ella option I just gave you.
I was thinking, I just want to pull that up. Sorry here. Struggling to drive with my my image. There we go.
Okay, so yeah, right. So it's instead of what you do today, and oops, sorry.
No, that was my bad. Sorry about that.
Instead of turning left here today, like you do, you would continue down here and either turn left here to get to Boyer and go whatever direction you want to go, or come to Superior, do a U-turn and come in that direction right there. Or as Amanda mentioned, coming in off the couplet up here and then doing this movement.
And I think we need to take a closer look at Superior as well, and just kind of how that's functioning overall, specifically with this west side of the highway here. We've had this intersection can get a bit congested given all the different turn movements there. So I think that our image is on 6. Right, so having the left turns here as well as right turns in, this is an area of quite a bit of conflict. So I think that is another area we'll take a little bit of a closer look at, but I fundamentally agree with you. There's multiple different ways to get to that destination. And really the point here is to minimize turn movements onto US 2 or from US 2, those left turn movements, as well as utilize that grid system. So the second part of the question, which I think I'll go back to this one, is would there be access from Lake Street onto US 2? So for example, let me zoom back in here. And this is one of those areas, I think, as Mandy mentioned, when we get into the preliminary engineering, I think we'll be able to take a much closer look at how all the dimensions work and how the layout would function from a width perspective here. But the question is really, if you were on Lake, would you be able to go straight through and get on to US 2? Particularly around that, I think the question is closely related to parking. Currently, this is a location of parking for both of these businesses here. And Preston, unless you have more to add to it, I think the intent was, at least initially, for this to be restricted, and it really needs to have a closer look at the dimensions.
Yeah, that's right. Ideally, this would be restricted there where there wouldn't be access. This would just be accessed from the Boyer side of it. And if you're on Lake, you'd access Lake to US 2 from that direction, or vice versa. This direction would be your access to Lake Street to US 2. So it's instead of traveling this direction on US 2 to get to Lake, you just changing your direction over to that one.
And I think also just to mention that the idea would be to design that area that says local access only for parking, and you might even be able to have expanded parking in that area by doing that. So, but as you said, Amanda, it really needs to be looked at a CAD level of detail.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, before we would, move forward and throughout the whole preliminary design process, that's part of our normal efforts to really engage the adjacent property owners as we start to work through those dimensions and kind of collaborate on what makes the most sense here recognizing that, again, the overall goal is from a safety perspective for all modes, pedestrians as well as motorists and bicycles, to start to, I'll say, clean up, if you will, a little bit, all of the different access points that we have along US to really help with not only mobility, but primarily safety as well. So we have lots of entrances. We have one here, here, and along this corridor. So if the intent would be to maintain the parking and make sure that we can have safe access. And I don't think we have any other questions at this time. However, certainly welcome any of the attendees to raise your hand if you have heard something you'd like a little bit more information on, or any other concerns. And it doesn't have to be just specific to the concept that's shown on the screen. If you thought of any questions about some of the other concepts, or really any of the other concepts we've provided in the other workshop series, we are happy to discuss them this evening. Melissa, do we have anyone raising their hand that you see on your end?
Amanda, I'm not seeing anybody, no.
Okay, thank you. I guess one last point, Mandy and Preston, I think that as we move forward with this draft plan, you know, in our part 1 series, we showed the concept of how Pine Street really will, and in this application in the long term, serve as that east-west connection from Highway 95, from those folks, let's say, coming from the Sagal area that want to get over maybe to, let's say, Dubs. I'll just pick on Dubs in this case. So if you're in Sagal and you want to go to Dubs for dinner, using Pine as that east-west connection, I think this long-term approach really helps to provide that connectivity. I think the community overall, we've heard a lot of feedback about the frustration around Pine Street being one way between 5th and 4th. And this does a nice job of cleaning that up, eliminating, as Preston mentioned, that signal at Church. I will also say I really commend our team, Preston, as well as Mandy and everyone at OTAC and Fair and Pierce that's worked really hard. What I appreciate is as we've come up with these solutions, there's been a real conscious effort to dive into the details on the data and the modeling to make sure that we're trying our best to get ahead of any, unintended consequences and taking a deep dive into a thorough analysis. So thank you both for doing that. I appreciate that we've taken a look at the signals and the modeling associated with that, and anticipate that these solutions will provide for not only better flow for all modes on US 2, but really for all of our side streets, providing that arterial and in both the east-west and the north-south direction. People tend to obviously pick the path of least resistance, and so making this function has, I would say, intended consequences for some of those neighboring streets where maybe we're getting a little bit of cut-through traffic, and that's less safe for, say, pedestrians and bicycles. So giving them the right place that they can be on a system that's designed for them, I think is important. And I think our team has done a great job of achieving that. So again, thank you. And we'll see if anyone on the call here tonight or the workshop has any final questions for us this evening. It's been a quiet crowd. All right. Well, hearing none, thank you everyone for participating this evening. Oh, I should have paused more for someone to type. I appreciate that comment. So it says, looks like a modified version of the original curve design. Looks good. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Yes, our team worked very hard at taking a look at that initial curve design from a few years ago and build upon it. And I think that the end result has come really far. So thank you for that comment. Anyone else? All right. Well, again, thank you and have a good evening. If you have any other questions or concerns that you think of going forward, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. You can reach me here at City Hall, Amanda Wilson, Infrastructure and Development Services Manager. My email address is on the website and underneath the link on our on our main page there under news and this article. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to set up one-on-one conversations if you have any additional feedback. So with that, good night and have a great evening.
Thanks.